So it's 6. Let's start. Of course, you can always catch up by just starting from a little bit earlier. So I'm going to start with a little presentation here. Oh, that doesn't work. I have to press share first. Okay, so we're going to do a little live coding session. We're going to do a negative filter widget for InstantSearch. Negative filter is also an exclusion filter. So I am Haroen. I am a developer, a software engineer at Algolia for the last 4 years. And what I really focus on is InstantSearch. I've been working on all 4 of the different versions of InstantSearch, which is both Vanilla, React, Vue, and Angular as well. But first, what's Algolia? If you are not familiar yet, Algolia is a search engine, basically, although we do lots of other things as well. In short, what we make is make it a lot easier to create fast and relevant search, and also much better. So what's on the agenda for today? Today we are going to look at what's InstantSearch first. Then we're going to describe an exclusion list or a negative filter. We're going to make it. We're going to package it up in the playing, and then at the end, we're going to make sure there is time for some Q&A. So let's start with the code. So we are going to create a InstantSearch widget. Now, first, what is InstantSearch? InstantSearch is a library that allows you to create search implementations that work from the first keystroke, like that. And this is then the search box. We also have refinement list here, price ranges. No, this is not a price range. This is a numeric menu, sorry. Rating, pagination, and a couple of other ones. And this is made for both Vue InstantSearch, Vanilla, this is the one I'm showing here, and the one that I'll be starting with. And then also after that, there is React InstantSearch and Angular InstantSearch. So what is an exclusion list meant to be? An exclusion list will behave the same as a refinement list. So a refinement list allows me to search for Apple and for GE. But I think I might have just broken it. If you search for Apple here, then we've got Apple stuff and HP stuff as well. My internet's a little bit slow, it seems. Okay, we're going to ignore that for a moment, and we're going to look at that later. But yeah, this allows you to check multiple things at once, and what we want is the opposite of that. We want items that are not going to be selected. Like maybe I really hate Apple and I don't want it. And that's what we're going to make. So first we're going to make a little repository, which is called exclusion. I'm going to call it negative filter. Negative refinement list. That's what it's going to be called. So I'm going to create it first. Negative refinement list. And I'm going to open this. So for now, there's no files yet. So custom widgets are actually made. They're going to be made exactly the same as any one of the widgets that are built into the library. And soon we are going to be working on a on opening up even more the custom widgets or the widgets that you make yourself. And for that, we're making a boilerplate. At the moment, it's still private because there's still some smaller things to tweak, but soon this will be public. Similarly, we will also have documentation that really explains completely how to make a custom widget. I'll be referencing to this a couple times during the presentation, during the live coding, whenever I need it. So I'm going to start with copying everything I have in the boilerplate, putting it in the item. So if we look at what we got here, there's actually a fair amount of items already. So we're going to start by looking at what all the files are that were just created. So first, there's the README, of course. This will need to be filled in and to explain the goal of our custom widget. We have the package JSON that allows everybody to use it with everywhere and also decides what the dependencies are. And we've got a license, we've got a Babel configuration, which is not too special. We have the index, which basically already hints to the different files that we have inside. We have the sample custom widget itself. We have the connector for the custom widget. And we have the renderer for the custom widget. At this point, it will be quite interesting to check out what a widget really is. So as you see here, everything eventually will go to the Algolia API, right? Every time we type a letter, it's going to go to the Algolia API and come back with a result. If I'm not using all my internet for streaming, I think. Sorry for that. Let's hope it doesn't really stay. And then the widget itself, like for example, if you take search box here, consists of two parts. The first one is the connector, which actually has the real logic, which sets the query, and also will retrieve the query from the results whenever the new results are in. And then on top of that, we have the renderer, which is basically creates this input in the form it's in, a couple of other things. And well, and then together, all of those things together is the actual widget. Okay, so without further ado, let's look at the other file. Look at the content that we have so far in the files. So we've created a couple types. So we have the connector, which I just mentioned. We have a widget factory and a renderer creator. So there is a couple parameters that will be given to the widget itself. This is things like the DOM container. And you have the connector options as well. This is stuff like attribute in refinement list. And then there's a couple more things that we'll touch on once we get there, which is render state and UI state. And then those are kind of put together. So the first thing that we'll do is rename everything that says sample custom widget in this type file and call it refinement list, which is what we'll be working with. And we're going to call that everywhere here, negative refinement list. Negative refinement list render. oh yeah, this one here's connect negative list. Update that. Just gonna make everything here negative refinement list. Yes, here this is called negative refinement list, except this one is lowercase. Yep. We have a couple more. Everything called the right way now. We're going to get back to that after, but all right, so we can see this. So these are the files now. We're gonna do a negative refinement list. And actually, let's do some documentation-based development. We're going to make everything the right way. So this would not be a sample custom widget. It will be negative refinement list for InstantSearch, yes. So allows you to exclude a refinement from the list, from the result set. Maybe we can get a better name after that, but for now, negative refinement list. Before someone goes and steals that package for me, I'm going to do so this version is set to 000. We're going to do npm publish. Let's call it negative refinement list. Of course, doesn't do anything yet. We will put the better versions on that later, but for now we can already see this on npm. The one on Yarn. That one is actually using Algolia, so oh yeah, I was too quick. It's not yet online. We're gonna check that later. All right. So what have we all got? We're going back to the README. So it's not called a sample widget. It is called negative refinement. So what do we want? We're going to put container, actually. Let's just call it the attribute that we want to work on. And a good example here would be brand, because you might want negative brands. And we'll maybe add some more parameters afterwards. That's what we're going to start with. So the options would be a container. Let's make this the same example here, which would be exclude. Right, so it allows an element as well. And the attribute, name of the attribute 2. And here we need a little bit more, which would be name of the attribute to exclude from the results. We're not going to have any other attributes for now yet. And we're going to look at the connector later. Let's just start. Start with the widget itself. So in the widget here, we have a widget creator, take some widget params. These widget params are these here. So what we just decided is that we have a container, which is a string or an HTML element. And we'll have an attribute, which is a string. Cool. So those are the parameters. And we'll need to pass them actually to the correct parts. So here we'll do container, we'll pass that to pass that from widget params.container, and to the connector, the thing actually having the business logic, we're going to pass the attribute, which is params.attribute. We're going to add a widget type here as well, which will be my name. Let's just do that and call it refinement list. I should have chosen spot. So what's this red for? Temp is not assigned to never. What does this mean? It probably is because this doesn't have a type yet. Yeah, that makes sense. Go to the types here again. What we want as the type to be is Haroen.negative refinement list, and also negative refinement list for the widget factory, for the widget. Which means that I just realized I made a small mistake here. No, it's not a mistake. So these are actually things that will be part of InstantSearch at a later point. Basically, these types are exported. There's a couple small parts that are not yet made for custom widgets, which is allowing a type other one than the built-in ones. Same with the widget type, and same with the render state. So, which is why for the custom widgets for now, or for your own widgets, we've allowed those to be. We've overridden them basically. I couldn't find my word. All right. So why is this still red? Oh yeah, of course. This is still using the widget factory. Okay, we're gonna look at this later. This is not too important right now. Let's get to the example so we can actually see something. So we're going to do negative refinement list from the source. And we're gonna do something like we're going to call this one exclude and on brand, just like in the example. So if we go to example and we are going to, I don't remember what I gave for the, oh, let's start. And look at the example. There was an issue in parcel, I remember. Valid version undefined. Let's hope reinstalling will help. Yeah, it might have been an older version or something like that. It's not too important. Let's go back to the example. Here we want to make this one exclude. Oh, it still doesn't work. Okay, I need to look at. Let's see. So parcel issue. What's going on? 12.4. 12.3 possibly. I thought possibly it was 12.5, like the latest. Yeah, okay, yeah, I just need to use 12.5 here. Let's see the example. So this already works. So we see something here. Oh, yeah, that's because we do not yet return UI state in our new connector. So before being able to see anything really, to see the rest work, we are going to make the renderer a little bit. So there is, let's first explain what's going on here, right? I didn't do that yet. So a widget is a function that takes the widget params. Those are just the arguments, and then turns that into arguments for both the renderer, which is meant to render the widget itself every time the connector changes. So we have render and dispose. And then we also have arguments for the connector itself, which are the connector params. And then the connector has the implementation for the logic. Cool. What's going on though is that in the renderer, we're not doing anything yet. So first we need to get the container. So here we have the container, which is a string or an HTML element. Actually, it's just an element. Here in the renderer. So first we're going to say const container node equals. So we want that to be an element is document query selector. That's the container node. That's which is correct. And we're just going to let the default error handler deal with that here in case something goes wrong. But container can be a string as well, so, a string or an element already. So we're going to do type of container string only when it's a string. Otherwise, we're just going to. Okay, so in the renderer, there is two functions. We have a function called render, which will be called anytime something changes. And we have to call the method dispose that's meant for removing. That's when the widget gets removed. So before doing anything, we'll need to create inside our container node. We are going to put a list. Document create element ordered list, and we're going to add that to the container. This is container node append child list. However, I'm not doing that in the right spot. This needs to happen in this version. And here we're going to check container node move child list. I'll need to check if that throws an error. If that throws an error when the list doesn't have it, or if it doesn't do anything. At the moment, can we properly append child of no? That's interesting. Container node is null, supposedly. I'm assuming this is because the query selector doesn't return anything. So if you go to main here, oh, I can see it already. Exclude, and here we will have called it exclude correctly. So now in our main, we have the exclude, which itself has a list in it. Which will be useful. At the moment, that's all it's going to render. It doesn't have anything yet to render. I'm going to just put main here. Search, going to expose that to the window. So we can do some testing. Search here. That's the InstantSearch instance. If you do the main index get widgets, this will give all of the currently mounted widgets. So in fact, we have ours in position 1. So if we do get widgets 1, that's the widget that we're talking about. If you do search, if we want to remove that, but yeah, the real way is exclude, is remove widgets plural. That's not too important right now. It works. It removed itself when it existed. If I call it again, oh, I just removed the hits widget. That's why, because that's position 1. All right, I think that's good enough to start. what does a negative refinement need to do? So we're going to look at the connector now. And for that, I'd like to see what's going on. Oh, that's already what. So there's a couple parts in a connector. So the first one is the type, which in my case is Haroen.negative refinement. And we have an init function. This one gets called like the first time whenever a widget gets added. And then we also have the render function. This one gets called anytime something gets changed. For both of those, we are calling an internal function for the called getWidgetRenderState that will basically get the render state that we need at the moment. So that's what we're going to implement first. No, first we're going to turn. So to have a working implementation again, yeah, it works now. This I removed this just earlier while testing. Yeah, so we want the render state of this widget to be filled. So what does the widget render? We'll write that type down first. So for the type, that's the render state of this widget here. Just basically everything that it's going to get out of the environment and into the widget. So export type negative refinement list state. We're going to have items here. Put as any for now. So items is the first thing that we'll want to add. Cool. And now we're going to see that this doesn't have doesn't return items, so it is wrong. So we need to get items somehow. But we don't have items yet. But what we do have here is the results. If you log the results out, you'll see that this is an object, a class really, that has access to the hits, which are the actual results, and also the facets, disjunctive facets, and you know what? We don't have them yet, right? But what we'll want is to get something in this facets. So how do we get something in this facets? So we need to set that as a search parameter to retrieve that. So search parameter here. Basically, we will go over the we'll set the search parameters that are required by default. So we're going to do add facet, and this is the attribute. Attribute we didn't yet scope out of here. This is the attribute. This is widget params. So if we add facet, the search results now are different because facets is now an array with the data in it. This is what we'll want to use for rendering. So how are we going to do this? in here in results, it actually has a bunch of functions as well to deal with, like get facet by name, get facet values, etc. So we are going to use results.get facet values. Oh yeah, results is possibly undefined. That's for the first time that it renders. So first we're going to do if no results. So we're going to return items as an empty array. That doesn't really happen much, do much yet, of course. But when there are results, we want to do results.get facet values of attribute. This is read for. Oh yeah, so we have some facet values here. We have name, count, is refined, and is excluded. So that's actually very interesting to go with. That's what we'll need to use. So to start with, we can actually just turn items as this. Okay, so now we don't use it yet, but we have access to it in the renderer. So in the renderer, we have the render options here. Render options give us an array of 0 and then an array of 100. And this is, you know, the ones that we want to display. Oh wow, time really flew. I went a little bit slow. Sorry if it is slower than you expected. We'll go a little bit over time here. So let's get back on track. We are going to read the items from the render options, and we're going to create DOM elements for those. So items dot for each items is any. Not add this to the render options yet correctly. Well, I'm gonna ignore that now for now. So we're gonna do this item is, so we're gonna call that an li equals create element I. Also gonna have a label and yeah. Next is document create text node item dot. So that's just the item dot name we're interested in here. And then we're gonna do list append child li append child text. So we have all the items here. There's a little bit of a problem, is that every time we type, they keep getting added. So for that, what we will use is in here, the easy way is just say list inner text is just emptying it out every time. Right? And we see different facets for every time you type something. It's already somewhere. but that doesn't really refine yet. So why does it not refine yet? It's because we didn't make that yet. So first, let's create the DOM. So in here, we're going to add const input equals document create element input and a label. And we're going to add the li and child label input append child text and label append child input. So now there's an input here. That's not so interesting actually. Oh yeah, this is the label we want to input. Text to be added to as well. That's not the type of input we want. We want a input dot type equals checkbox. This is the type of checkbox that we want. And then we'll need to just add an event listener to the input add event listener. And then click change. So if you have anything here, it's going to put the event. Cool. So we need to get access to the item that we actually want to refine. We want to change. Yes. So we.target. No, in fact, we already know it. It's item.value that we want to refine. Name, I guess. Yeah. That's the name of the item here. Okay. So that's enough information to get us to refine. So in here, what we'll also need to make is a refine function. So this is not, oh, that's of course why it was any. It's because I actually declared it as an array of any. So we actually have a type for that, search results dot facet value. Know that it's a facet value here. But let's move on to the next part, which is a refine function. Refine function will take a value as a string and return void. Because it doesn't return anything, so the function doesn't exist yet. But what we will want in the renderer is we want to define and a refine will come no items as any. Why does this not have the that's typed wrong. Negative refinement list render options and renderer options for that one. So if I have negative refinement list. the render options here. Just think for a moment here. Takes the render options. Oh, that's the actual render options. Okay, that's because I played with the base types just earlier. There's actually two different things. So actually just takes that directly here. Not sure why this is red. Oh yeah. Back to the renderer. Okay, we're going to ignore this TypeScript part for now. But is refine a function yet? No, it's not yet a function because we didn't yet declare it. So refine in this case is just a function that does nothing, because when there's no refinements yet, there's also no refinement yet to happen, so that's okay. So const refine is here we are going to set the new search parameters. So in here we have access to the helper, for example. So this will take the as we see here, a value strings value, which is the new one that should be added or removed or toggled really. And so we're going to do helper dot add facet exclusion of the attributes. And the value is not any but string here, because but in fact, if we put it here, we don't need to declare that. That's better. So is this actually becoming a facet exclusion? So it doesn't seem to do a query. Oh yeah, this doesn't do a query because we didn't search. After that, you need to search. So if you set Metro as an exclusion, gone from the list, it's at the bottom of the list here. Metro is no longer there. It's a bit hard to see. Let's pick one that is actually here. That's the Amazon one. So if we remove from the list, oh, Amazon is no longer in the results. That's what we want. But it's behaving a little bit wrong. Is that this box is not checked. So why is the box not checked? It's because we didn't do anything in the renderer. If we check in the items here, the 101 items, the last one here, name Amazon is excluded true. So that's what we want to use as the checked. So we're going to do input.checked is item.is excluded. So if we now again exclude Amazon, which is now actually checked, which is correct. It's no longer there. If we check Apple here and list, this works perfectly fine. However, removing does not yet do anything. So that's the next thing we need to do. in the connector, we are going to check if it is already excluded. So how do you do that? You're going to do we're going to window.helper. So that's just from the last render. If we do helper is excluded. It's a function for and it's false. And if we put, let's sort these values. Yes. If we now check whether Amazons are excluded, that's correct. So if you do helper.is excluded attribute value, in that case, we will want to, it's here, helper remove facet exclusion attribute value. So if we just sort it by thing now, it is now actually toggling. So Amazon is no, not in the first. Now it's in the first again. So that works. Cool. So we no longer need to worry about this. Next, there's a couple smaller things to do here. The render state basically is the thing that this allows you to refine from outside of the widget. So in here we need to put negative refinement list, the name of the widget. And in there we will want to put one entry per attribute. So let's attribute. Let's spread out the previous one. And refinement list doesn't exist yet. We didn't add it to types. So in types we have index render state, which is negative refinement list attribute string. And that's basically the current refinement that we're going to store in there. No, sorry, that's the render state. That's what we put here. This is probably because connector is broken. We're going to ignore the red lines now. So for the attribute, we're going to call this.get get widget render state, and we're going to call that the render options. So that doesn't really change much, but it is needed. And then the next part that we're going to implement is the UI state. So the UI state basically translates from the search parameters a object to something that we're going to use for routing. So to enable routing, we're going to just add routing true. Basically, that's the query here. This doesn't show up in the URL yet. So we want that to show up in the URL. We're going to retrieve that from the search parameters, the current search parameters. So if we get the search parameters here, this is where they're logged out. What we want is get exclude refinements. So attributes. So this is here Best Buy exclusive. They are now on the list. That's actually the UI state you want. Similarly to get render state, we're gonna put it in negative refinement list UI state dot refinement list, and then we're going to put it as, for the current attribute, the UI state is yes. And then if we want to get the search parameters out of those refinement list, we got the UI state here. When we refresh, this now has the negative refinement list for brand as a set, but they weren't set in here. So how do you do that? You need to get the UI state. So if UI state slash dot question dot negative refinement list dot if that is an array, so we're going to call this returning state, and then here we're going to do state dot, we're going to get this here then, I'll use that. We're going to use sort values to get the next state, basically. State is a concept. So this is going to put the accumulator and the current. The current is every time one of these strings. So we're going to call accumulator dot search parameters. Accumulator dot add exclude refinement attribute each one. Yes, so that's correct. So now, in fact, when we refresh, these stay in the list and they get excluded. So if we exclude ultra look, if that one exists, no, it doesn't exist. Yeah, it's in the URL now. Yeah, well, is there really anything else? No, that's about it. Now, I know I went a little bit over time. There's plenty of other stuff that you can use to go further here. Oh, yeah, but I forgot to publish it so that everybody can use at least this version of it. So we are going to version it first. Do we have a version something here? No, it's not included. So if we're gonna do here, we can do build, basically create the CommonJS version of our library. It's gonna create the ECMAScript modules version of the library, as well as the UMD, which includes everything here. That's still called sample custom widget. Change it afterwards. Oh yeah, those types are for this TypeScript not working yet. We'll look at that another time. And if you do publish version 1.0.0, we will be able to see that InstantSearch negative refinement list. That's what it's called. It's called negative refinement list. I forgot to prefix it with InstantSearch. Previous. It's called negative refinement list. Still doesn't show up in the search. Package exists yet? It does. So it has the types, basically. You'll be able to use it for anything. Let's do some Q&A. If you got any questions, we can definitely do them. If there is no questions that we have right now, we can always ask the questions on Twitter. So my name is Haroen Viaene, or you can ask at Algolia for more questions. Have a nice time, everybody. And that was it for today.